I'm back, baby, for another video. Today we're gonna be talking about some sort of controversial. It's not controversial. It's just kind of annoying, if I'm being honest. We're gonna be talking about style, finding your style in photography, and kind of what that means. And to be honest, I have a lot to say. So when I first started photography, obviously I had like people that I looked up to. I had the people that I was learning from, which was Jared Polin, Peter McKinnon, Sam Elkins. I love all these guys, but Sam Elkins really is like the GOAT. And Short Stash. And I got my camera. I remember always just like looking at their photos and then going out and trying to replicate them. And that's not bad. I think that's a great learning tool. I think when you look at someone's photo that you like and you assess what makes this photo look the way it does and then go out and try to replicate it, I think that is a really good learning tool because you're learning what makes a photo look good. And I think that's really good that you go out and you practice that skill. But that can get a little hairy because if you continue to do that forever, you'll never develop your own style. And it's a trap that a lot of photographers run into, and it's what makes them never differentiate themselves from anyone else. Most people that fall into that category think that their editing style is what defines basically their whole entire style. If I handed them a camera and I said, without Lightroom as a tool completely, would I be able to differentiate your style from anyone else's? But I've worked with enough photographers to think and see that they run into an identity crisis eventually. Like they really do. And they're never confident in their work, and they always think that they're not good enough, and it's because you're trying to be a worse copy of someone else. This might seem off topic and kind of out of left field, but it's not. What I'm about to say is gonna seem like that, but it's not. I am a Christ follower. Sorry, I got bit by a bug. I believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. He came, he died, and he rose again, and he saved us all from our sins. And he loves you, in case you didn't know. Now, the reason I bring all that up is because I believe that Jesus, God, formed you to be completely unique, a complete, beautiful version. Gosh, these bugs. God formed you to be a perfect version of you, and no one else is like you. When you stay in a rhythm of copying other people's work in photography, you're always just gonna be a worse version of somebody else. You're never gonna be authentic. And that's why you're never gonna be satisfied with your own work. That's why you're always gonna seem worse. It's because you're not worse. You're just a worse copy of who you're copying. They found their true identity and their true style. And you just need to find that. And that's okay. I'm about to tell you how. It's actually not that complicated. Number one thing that helped me a ton is shooting film. I'm not gonna lie. The reason why film helped me so much is because I was editing my film photos, and then I realized that by editing my film photos, I was really just ruining my film photos, if I'm being honest. I was sending them to State Film Lab, and they already do a correction, and so there wasn't really a need for me to edit the photos. I mean, I was literally just making the photos way worse because I was trying to match my style. But if my style is worse, why am I sacrificing that just to match my style? And so I stopped editing my film photos, and it forced me to create and find what I liked about a photo without Lightroom. Outside of Lightroom, what makes a photo good? Instead of just copying colors, anybody can sit there and do that. What makes a photo good? What makes a photo interesting? Your image in your camera should be incredible and almost post-worthy. Almost like post-worthy, not like post-production worthy, but like social media post-worthy, portfolio post-worthy, without editing at all. It should almost be that close. Now, here are the few main things I want to talk about that I've discovered helped me discover my style without Lightroom, my true style. And then Lightroom kind of just like accentuated that. The first one is what a lot of people talk about, compositions. People use different framing tools all the time to make a really good composition. There's a million other videos on composition, and I encourage you to go look at that, or maybe I'll just make a few talking about composition. Coming soon, composition video. All a composition is, in really basic terms, is where your subject is in correlation to its background and its environment within the frame. So when I'm shooting people, whether it's a car, whether it's a person, whether it's a product, nature, there's always a subject in your photo, unless it's some kind of abstract thing, but they all have a composition. There's always something, even in the photo right here. So even in this abstract photo, you can see composition. So we're gonna dissect this. So when you look at this photo, there's an obvious line pretty much right down the middle across from side to side of the frame. Now on both sides of that, it almost looks like there's a light source. That's because there is a light source. This is a photo of, it's a super slow shutter photo of the ocean, beach during sunset in Hawaii on my honeymoon. Shout out marriage. As you can see, the light source is coming in from the top and it's swooping in, and from one corner of the image to the other corner of the image, it continually gets brighter and darker with a nice line across. It's simple, but it's beautiful. It's a simple composition with simple colors, and the simplicity of the photo is beautiful. Whether you edit it one way or the other, the actual photo itself has its own style outside of Lightroom. You can apply this same thing to portraits. This is one of my favorite portraits of my wife ever. I mean, my wife is beautiful, so already we're ahead of the game. But let's just take this photo for an example. So obviously there's background elements. You can see the leaves and everything in the background, but then there's also foreground elements. There's palm branches sweeping in from each side, and she's framed directly center. And although her frame, and this is what I love about compositions, and I think it's super cool, is, have you ever heard of the rule of thirds? Well, basically, you split from top to bottom, you split your frame into 3 pieces, and your eye line should be on that third frame, on that very, very top. So like right here, kind of, I mean, imagine this screen, like boom, boom, there's lines right there. Well, actually on this one, because of the framing, because of the way this photo just works, I put her eye line a little bit down in the frame and I centered her head up because of the way the palm branches, and I got creative. I broke the rules for a creative reason, and that is called style. It's called art. If it was just following rules, it wouldn't be art, it would be math. This photo is also film. Notice a pattern here? My favorite photos are my film photos because they force me to make creative decisions in camera and not just rely on post-production. And here's another example. This is a photo of nature. This is probably my favorite photo ever, and this one actually isn't on film, it's on a 1DX Mark III. Yes, this is edited, but the raw is fire. The photo itself outside of the edit is what makes it good. What's great about this photo is there's so many layers. I love this photo, there's so many layers. There's a small subject, it's a big boat, but it's a small subject. It's a small in the frame because I chose to shoot wide for a reason. I chose to shoot wide because I recognized what was so beautiful about this image. I was almost picturing it in my head before I even took the photo. You have beautiful ocean, this small boat with tiny little people on it, in comparison to this great big mountain, and the sun is just peaking, and there's just layers. It's like sky, sun, mountain, ocean, boat. It's just beautiful, and there's so many layers there. And then we can dissect even further, and we can talk about light layers. Now this is kind of interesting. There's a lot of different areas that are exposed differently. There's the highlights in the very back, which are just super bright, almost blown out, but it's okay because I'm exposing for my subject, and so it looks natural. There's also almost some underexposed area in the rocks of the mountain on the side, and that's okay. But there's just all these different layers of color from the ocean versus the muted tones in the rocks. All these different things mixed with good framing make this image probably my favorite photo to date. Now, the last thing I want to talk about really applies to, well, it applies to a lot of different things, but I'll use portrait photography as an example of this. I think the third thing that you can also use as an incredible tool is exposure. Now, that might seem obvious to you. Like, obviously, you have to change your settings every single time you look at a scene, but I think the way you expose a scene can really, really make a difference in the way your overall image will look at the end. Let's say there's a couple and they're standing in the exact same frame with the exact same lighting. I take 3 photos. One, I underexpose. Then let's say I take the exact same photo again, and this time I overexpose everything, okay? I overexpose the whole entire photo. And then I just take a third photo where everything's kind of middle ground. The highlights are a little too high. The bottom, the bottom of the image, why am I tripping? The shadows, I don't know why that was so hard for me to. The shadows are under a little bit, but my subject is perfect. Now, you probably are saying, oh, Trevor, but what about post-production? What if you just take them down in post and make them all the same exposure? They actually won't look the same. They actually will not look the same, even if you correct it in post. A lot of photographers use post-production as such a crutch, but getting your exposure how you want it to look in camera is such a big deal. Here's an example of a couple shoot I went on. It was a maternity photo, and I wanted to get, I know a lot of photographers will tell you don't shoot in harsh light. Well, I think you can in some cases. And here's exactly how I use shooting in harsh light to actually make a really cool styled photo in camera without post. So for this photo, she got a big old belly. I was shooting shadow side of her all day. That means that means she was backlit, right? So the sun was behind her. The shadow side of her body was the side that I was shooting, right? The sun's over here, I'm shooting this side. So on this, I actually decided to flip it. Now, if you look at this photo, I, in camera, purposely exposed so that she just popped out. Now, a lot of photographers are scared of shooting in harsh sunlight because they're scared that their skin tones will be clipping and overexposed. But if you do it with purpose and intention and you know how to use a camera properly, it's not an issue, and you can actually use it as an advantage and a way to add style to your photos, such as this. All you have to do is expose for the highlights. Expose for the highlights. If you're placing your subject in direct sunlight, if you try to expose for everything in frame, which a lot of beginners make this mistake. If you try to expose for everything in frame in a scenario like this, then everything is going to end up looking like trash. Instead, focus on trying to make your subject stand out. At the end of the day, that is what matters in any good photo, is making a clear subject and making it look good. Whether it's that is just the whole point of photography. I would say do it, experiment with it, and use an example like this. The reason why her skin isn't clipping is because I didn't pull it down in post-production. I didn't adjust any highlight slide. I didn't do that. I mean, I did do that, but without post-production, I got it right in camera first. So I said, okay, I'm gonna expose for my subject, and everything else outside of my subject, the background, whatever, it doesn't matter if it's underexposed, because my subject is what matters. And she's got this really cool, almost silhouette. This would be a great black and white because there's so much light differentiation. Like there's so much depth in this photo outside of Lightroom. The last thing, and the real big thing that I want to talk about, which a lot of event photographers, I experience this a lot in church. This applies to everything in photography, right? Is capturing emotion. When you look at a photo, if you don't feel anything, then the photo is probably boring and it probably sucks, if we're being honest. So I work at a church, I work with a lot of volunteers, and I tell people all the time to wait and capture the good moments. I don't care how well you know how to use a camera. I don't care how well you know how to compose an image. I don't care how well you edit. I don't care if you don't capture good moments. When we're talking about shooting people, shooting things with emotion, I mean, people portray emotion, right? If you shoot someone, you want them to look a specific way in the camera. If you're shooting models, if you're shooting senior portraits, you want them to look happy, right? They're graduating. If you're shooting a funeral, obviously you don't want to take a photo of a dude laughing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, maybe you do. I don't know why you'd be a funeral photographer. That was a bad example. So when you're taking photos of people, when you're taking photos of cars or anything that's moving, action, whatever, waiting for the right time to actually take the photo of your subject. I want to challenge you guys to go out and just focus on those 4 main things. Don't worry about editing. Don't worry about all that. Worry about getting how you want the photo to look in camera first. The photo should be, if you nail all 4 of these things in every single one of your photos, it's gonna be pretty hard to make look bad. I mean, you're gonna have to try to make it look bad. Editing, you shouldn't have to do much, if I'm being honest. And that is when you look at all the greatest photos ever, they're not because of some crazy cool edit. It's because of a crazy good photo. And those are 2 different things. So start following those 4 main things and discover what you like about each of those 4 main things. And that is gonna be how you develop your style. It's not gonna be because some stupid preset and edit. I'm not here to sell you that crap. Thanks for watching this video. I hope this helps you guys. And like I said, get out there, start practicing, and get shooting.